Hi, I'm Daniel. I'm a reload on IRC. It's over there, really big screen. So the first thing I'd like to mention is why Masterless Puppet is important in AWS. And this is also important for if you're using Google Compute Engine or any other cloud service provider where you have lots of hosts that are coming up and down, and you have lots of hosts. So the first thing is lots of hosts. I've scaled the Puppet Master a few times, and it can get really hairy when you have a lot of hosts. And so Masterless Puppet, you don't have to scale the master. All of your hosts have the code on them, so you don't have to do that. And then the other thing is you have lots of hosts that are coming up and down, and Puppet Masters require you to approve new hosts, if you haven't tried that before. And you can automatically approve all new hosts, which completely ruins your security model. Or you can manually approve every new server that automatically comes up, which is also kind of terrible, right? So with Masterless Puppet, you distribute all of your Puppet configuration to all of your hosts, and then so you do that outside of Puppet, and then you run Puppet when you boot up, and then it configures the system. And specifically in my model, you never run Puppet again. If you need to reconfigure your server, you destroy it and you build a new one. Cattle, not pets, right? So you just make a new one and you kill the old one. You shoot it, it's dead. So in AWS, I use a few resources to do this. The first one is an EC2 instance, which if you haven't used AWS, it's just their name for a virtual server. The second is EC2 user data, which is a run on first boot script. If you reboot a host, it doesn't run again, it just runs once. Then you have an IAM role, which is the AWS way of granting access for an EC2 instance to AWS resources, such as an S3 bucket, which is a file store in AWS that AWS manages. So you put files in it, you can get files out of it with an IAM role. A few other resources I'm going to use. I'm going to use GitHub for managing my version control. If you don't know what GitHub is, it's just a Git server. And there's other things for SVN. You can use pretty much anything, but I'm using GitHub because it's public, so I can access it without any credentials. Then I'm going to use the PuppetForge, which Lindsay talked about. And that lets me not write all of my Puppet code. I just use someone else's code, and it sets it all up for me. And then I'm going to use Hiera, which ships with Puppet. There's a talk about it later from Spencer. But basically, it lets you define data outside of your Puppet manifests. And that's really important for what I'm going to do, because I'm going to list all of my Puppet modules that are coming from the Forge in there. I'm going to list all of the classes that get included onto hosts in there. And I'm going to list all of my extra data that goes into classes as parameters through that. So the first thing is the Git repo. And in the Git repo, because it's completely public and anyone can read it, I put my modules, which I include a license on, and I put my non-secret Hiera data. You don't put your secret Hiera data in there because it's going to be public and you want to keep that completely separate all the time. I had to migrate a mixed infrastructure to a not mixed infrastructure, and I leaked secrets 5 times in 1 year. And that was really bad because I leaked some really big secrets. It's terrible. Never mix them. Right? So this Git repo gets installed to /etc/puppet. I've never run anything on Windows except when I was in high school. So I have no idea how to do this on Windows. So you install it to /etc/puppet, and it's going to have a config file for Hiera. It's going to have your Hiera data. It's going to have your modules, and that's pretty much it. I'm going to show you the one that I use. This is my repo that I will be using for a demo in a little bit. And well, it's already pretty big. I don't need to make it bigger. So the one thing you'll see there, the one thing you'll see, let's see here. I've got 3 things in there that I didn't mention. I've got a license, which is just, for me, it's the Mozilla public license, because I get to open source everything. I've got a README file, so that GitHub will link to my slides. And I've got scripts. So the scripts is going to include one thing that you won't normally see in this repo, which is my user data script. We'll come to that later. Right, nope. OK. So I list my PuppetForge modules in Hiera, and that's going to look like this. So first, my Hiera config. It's really simple. You have a role and a secret. So that's how you reference a global variable in a Hiera config. It's : because it's global, and it's role, and the % makes it actually reference it. It's a YAML file, so it's YAML, that's the backend's bit. And it's in Etsy Puppet YAML, which is in my repo. The secret isn't in there, but it is on my local host. And that looks like this, right? So I've got a class variable in there, so that's the web app class and the variable secret. And that's going to automatically fill that because Hiera Puppet integration is awesome. There we go. So this is my public YAML, and I list the Puppet Lab standard lib module because I install that everywhere I go because it's the most awesome module ever. And then I have the concat module, which lets me combine multiple strings from multiple places into one resource, which I just love. But it's required for the Nginx module, which, so you see I've added -b. Those are actually command line options to the Puppet module install command, because I don't even have to know how the PuppetForge works. I can just use Puppet module install. So this forces the version, and then I'm including the class web app, and I'm setting a class variable. So the next thing is secrets. So I'm going to make an S3 bucket. It holds files. They have a path. Really simple structure. And then I'm going to make an IAM role for access. And then I'm going to assign that role to my EC2 instance. And my EC2 instance can just access that file whenever it wants. And this is the permissions model for this, right? So you don't assign or approve a new host. You assign it a role. And whenever a host comes up, it has a role, so it has permissions to access AWS resources, such as my secrets. And you can use this to limit your access to only the secrets that are actually available for that specific server. So if you want a web app to have these secrets, you want the DB server to have these secrets, right? You can split it up however you want, and then Hiera will combine all of the variables together for you in intelligent ways. And the last thing is deployment. So you're going to use that user data script, which runs on first boot. It's going to download my GitHub repo. It's going to download my secrets from S3. It's going to install my PuppetForge modules for me, and then it's going to run Puppet. One special thing is that I'm going to assign a global variable in Puppet with a factor fact using external facts. I put it in a folder. I make just name equals value, and it's done. It's really great, and you can tell how I classified my node. And then I launch my instance with that user data. So I've actually written all of this, and yeah. And now it's time for a live demo. I want this page. OK. What you haven't seen is my user data script. So this is my user data script. It's in my repository. Looks like this. I'll scroll down in a little bit. But I need to install, so I'm going to use Amazon Linux because it's a nice default. And I can just use it, and they install a lot of tools, but not all of them. So I need to install Git, because they don't install Git, and I need Git. Then I install JQ, which is a JSON parser for Bash. And then I install Puppet, because we kind of need Puppet, right? So this is the part where I do that external fact thing I mentioned. And I can put it in any file.txt, and it will automatically pick this up. And now I've classified my node. I'm going to clone my branch. I'm going to do a really cool thing here. You need Puppet 1.8, maybe 1.7, but I think 1.8 in order to do the -- branch thing. And you can feed it any Git reference, and it will check out that Git reference instead of master head or whatever else, right? So this allows me to not check out master, because I'm going to test something before I deploy it by checking out whatever I wrote it on, which in this case is the classify branch. So then I use the AWS command line tool to go to S3 and copy a file from a bucket. This is going to be the name of my bucket. I haven't created it yet. And then I'm just going to copy it to the local YAML directory, which is where Hiera is going to pick it up. So I'm going to use Hiera here. It's configured with my Hiera YAML file, which I showed you earlier. I'm going to use -a, which is for an array. And that basically means that it merges arrays from a set of Hiera files. But I only have one, so I don't actually need that option. And then I'm going to, right here is a very important bit. It's : roll, because that's how I specified it in the Hiera file. And I have to pass it that parameter in order for it to know, because it doesn't just know like it would in Puppet. So it's going to look up the modules key right here, and then it's going to parse it with JQ into a bash understandable format, which is just new line separated unquoted strings, raw strings. Then I'm going to use sed to modify that into a Puppet module install command. I'm going to use --force, and this is kind of important because normally the Puppet module install command installs all of the dependencies and it updates all of them to their latest possible version. And this is bad if you're trying to manage versions. So you have to manage all of your versions in your hierarch file, or in your hierarch configs, but you don't have to, only use the latest versions. You can actually pin versions. And then here with eval, I'm going to take those Puppet module install commands and actually run them. And then last thing is Puppet apply. I'm going to use the -e option, which runs a string instead of a manifest file, because my manifest file is really simple. I'm just going to include a hierarch array called classes. This hierarch array command is basically the equivalent of my hierarch-c-a variable up here, right? Except it's a lot simpler in Puppet because integration. So it just includes all those classes. If you remember earlier, I only have one class. It's called web app, and it's going to set up a web page. So let's go ahead and look at the web app module. So first, really simple Git directory, right? There's no actual templates there. There's just an empty directory, and there's only one manifest. So modules, web app, manifests, init, right? So it's pitch black. You're likely to be eaten by a group. That's what we'll see if none of my stuff works. Hopefully it won't. I did this like 10 minutes ago and it worked. So it makes a web page. It's going to show that text, and the title is going to be demo. Puts it here, serves it with the public nginx module, which I showed you earlier from Jay Fryman. And really easy to handle. I just tell him, serve it out of this directory, and it's all handled. That's all the code I have to write in order to serve a web page, which used to be not the case. It used to be so much more. I love the PuppetForge. Yeah, that's pretty much everything. So, gonna go to the S3. No? Okay, well, looks like it's gonna work. Gonna create my bucket. This is what I said I would name it in my user data script. I'm gonna put it in the US standard region because that's just like the default. And that's gonna create a bucket. I'm gonna create an IAM role, which is also going to be named Reload Puppet Demo. I'm going to name everything Reload Puppet Demo. And so this role needs to be for an EC2 instance, and I'm going to give it a custom policy that I wrote, which allows it only to read that one secret file. Policy document, I have one over here. I had one over here. Ah, there we are. Open anyway. Apparently I did have it open. I'm just blind. Get to try again. Okay. I'm going to see how the Wi-Fi is doing here instead of trying to use mine, because apparently I don't have good signal from my cell service. Nope.
Wi-Fi here is very unhappy.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to open up the console. Gonna wait a little while because this takes forever. Gonna tell me my session isn't expired anymore? You've got to be kidding me. It's gonna tell me my session isn't expired anymore. Okay, fine. We're gonna try this whole create stuff again thing. Right, so wanna create a bucket. It's gonna be named Reload Puppet Demo. If I can type, which I apparently can't. Create that bucket. Wait. open up my bucket. And since the IAM console is still loading, I'm going to upload my secrets file, which is right here. I showed it to you earlier. It has to be very, very quiet. I'm going to upload that. Hopefully it works. All right, ready to create a new rule. Puppet demo. EC2 instance. Custom policy. Select. Called secret. Oh, I'm not naming everything Puppet demo. Grab that again. Okay, so what this is S3 get object. It's just permission, read my reload puppet demo / secret.yaml file. I'll create that role. And with all of those things in place, that's working, I'm ready to create an instance. So Amazon Linux, like I mentioned earlier, I'm going to choose a nice small instance because I don't want to spend money on this. Now I need to assign my IAM role someday. And I'm going to do an extra advanced thing here and create a user data script. Oh, come back. Nope. This one. So this is my whole user data script, as I just showed you earlier. Paste it right there. Storage, tags. I'm going to name my instance reload puppet demo. And I'm going to configure a security group, which this is firewall rules for AWS. I'm going to allow SSH and HTTP so we can see our web page. Yeah. All right. So this will come up in a little bit, and it'll be working, hopefully. So I need this to be a public IP before I can do anything, so I'm going to go back to my slides. So that was the live demo, almost. And hopefully, when it comes up later, it'll show all of the right things, and it'll have a nice joke up there. So some improvements you can make on this method is that you can split up your higher secrets file so that you have even more things. That's not on the slide yet. But basically, you can split it up so that you actually split your higher secrets by application as well as by role. And so you can split it up. So this isn't just a DB, it's a DB for the Firefox accounts product or anything like that, and it can be really, really useful that way. The next thing you can do is you can bundle everything that's in Etsy Puppet, and except secrets, because you don't want to bundle secrets, because you never want to mix secrets. I use FPM for this, but basically what you do is you bundle /Etsy/Puppet, and you put everything in an RPM file or a deb file or whatever you need to install in your system, and then you install that during production instead of trying to download things from Git, which goes down, or download things from PuppetForge, which goes down. And this happens every time a node scales up, so you want it to be really reliable. S3 is reliable. S3 can serve RPM repos. I just put it in S3, serve it as an RPM repo, and then download an RPM and install it. It's great. So that works really great. And then the other thing you can do is you can store all your secrets in Git, because that's the only thing not in Git right now is your secrets. So you put all those in a Git repo, and you don't put it on GitHub, because that's public. And then you set up a server that has that Git repo, and it just automatically syncs like master or whatever you want to the S3 bucket. And then you can update your secrets just by pushing it to the Git repo, and then they end up available to all of your servers. It's really convenient. So some pros of this, as you saw, I can deploy any code revision. This is really great compared to, for instance, only being able to deploy branches, which you can do with various setups on Puppet Master. Like, you can deploy anything with this. You can do a very simple PuppetForge integration. This is the simplest I've ever been able to make it to integrate PuppetForge modules, where you're actually automating, well, I mean, I've done Puppet Master installs, and when I want to automate the master, even that doesn't install all the PuppetForge modules I want effectively. So this is the easiest I've ever made it. It's scalable. Unlike having Puppet Master, you can lots of servers, right? As many as you want. You don't manually approve servers because they just have permissions when they spin up. And Puppet only runs once. This is good. It's also bad. Puppet only runs once, right? You have to do all of your stuff right the first time. All of your dependencies have to be accurate so that All of your dependencies have to be accurate so that they come up in proper order so they work the first time, because Puppet's not going to get run again. Lots of people use that as a fallback. Puppet runs again and again and again, and eventually it has consistency. You need Puppet to have consistency now, and so you have to architect for that. But when you do have that, it's really great because all of your stuff is actually working properly. The next thing is that the Puppet Foreman dashboard and like the Puppet DB dashboard and lots of the other dashboards, they don't work really well. But that's kind of AWS's fault, not Masterless Puppet's fault. Because you have servers that are coming and going and coming and going, and they kind of all expect your servers to be permanent, which they aren't, right? So it's like, oh no, all your servers are out of sync. Well, no, the servers are all dead. I only have 10 servers that are actually live. And the last thing is it doesn't translate well outside of AWS because you don't have IAM rules. You don't have a built-in permission model for all your servers, right? So before we do questions, which I hope you have a lot of, apparently I talked really fast. I practiced this talk like 15 times, and I had it at like 30 minutes. And when I panic, I start talking faster and faster. So, yeah. Here's my, okay. Oh, don't be like that. Oh, yes, yes. Victory. It says, what's up, Doc? So, any questions?
What was the initial business problem you were solving here? This is very interesting. What was the creative spark for this?
So the question is, what was the driving force for me creating this model? And so my team switched to AWS from hardware, and we had a lot of hardware, and I had a lot of Puppet clusters and whatever else. And when we came to AWS, we actually had to have firewalls set up so that we could access all the servers. We didn't have a good way for having a shared service. So I was supposed to be in charge of Puppet. But all of my teammates are in charge of all their applications. And they had to let me have firewall access to all their applications, which is a pain. And I was like, or I can give you access to S3, which is a really easy permission. They already know how to do it. So they access S3, and that's it. That's enough.
So why only run Puppet once? Why not? I guess when you're masterless, you can't really run the agent.
So,
but can you just run it out of cron?
The question is why only run Puppet once? And the answer is you don't have to. You can run it out of cron. That's a perfectly normal thing to do. And the real reason that you only run Puppet once, in my opinion, is because Puppet tries to converge your servers, but I don't want my server to converge. I want it to be left completely alone and not change, right? So when Puppet server comes up, I don't want it to look for more manifests. I don't want it to change over time. I want it to try once, and if it fails, it fails. It's done. Kill the server, try again. So that's why I do that.
So I use Masterless for doing server-based hospitals, but I've never tried to do anything with AWS. So one of the things I noticed that you were doing there is that you're sort of going into the web console and you're putting all the things together. Have you thought about taking it one step further or having ideas to do that? How to do that, so that you're not only just setting up the machine itself, but then also setting up the EC2 as well.
So. Yeah, so he said that he uses Vagrant a lot, and he's wondering if there's better ways to automate this. Is that right, more or less?
No, I was saying that I've done the Masterless thing.
Yeah.
I've never done the AWS thing, and I noticed that I'm not that familiar with AWS, but what if I wanted to write a recipe to actually deploy the EC2 instance itself, rather than copy and pasting the...
So the question is, can you write a recipe to deploy the instances? And I've never done that in Puppet. I actually, terrible confession, I use Ansible to deploy servers. And I use Puppet to configure them, because Ansible has native types for AWS stuff, right? So I deploy CloudFormation, which is the automation framework that AWS provides. And then it'll set up my buckets, it'll set up my servers, it'll set up everything else, load balancers, etc. And then, oh, sure. Lindsay also has something to say.
We have a team working on things like that. I can't remember. I'm looking in this direction. I think that's where the question came from. On GitHub, and I guess in the Puppet Labs namespace, there's kind of like provisioning as code that they just launched. And obviously, AWS is #1, so maybe that kind of meets that need. Like, I want to define the creation of a new instance, and then it proceeds on its merry way with Puppet. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And actually, Colleen is our primary OpenStack person, so you should talk to her.
Okay, any other questions?
You said that it only runs once. How do you actually trigger that to run?
Okay, so the last line of my user data script was a Puppet command, and that runs on first boot, so that's when Puppet runs. The question was, it only runs once, how do I trigger it? So the answer is user data script. There's another question all the way at the top.
Yeah. So I noticed that you're spinning up an AMI to start that process off, and it looked like you were using like 3+ version of Puppet. Were you able to install that on that base Amazon Linux, or did you end up having to?
So the question is, I'm using the Amazon Linux AMI, but I'm also using a version 3 of Puppet, and the Amazon Linux AMI actually only ships with Puppet 2.7. The answer is that I installed it with Ruby Gems, and Ruby Gems just sort of took care of it all for me, and it worked really well.
So I noticed when you created so you have your S3 bucket, the way you controlled security was when you created your EC2 instance, you gave it permissions specifically to that bucket. Is there any implications with that model about a user on the VM being able to get into that S3 bucket, or it's kind of like a non-traditional way that I've seen? Like, if somebody else was spinning up a VM, they would have to have access to the S3 API to assign permissions to that bucket, or how do you control access to the?
So the question is, what are the security implications of assigning those roles, both for a user on the virtual machine and also for being able to assign that role to a virtual machine? So AWS has a thing where you can grant a user permission to assign roles, but not to create roles. So that's one thing you can do. A user on the machine will have all the permissions the machine has. But you can restrict their access with IP tables to get to the API so that they have to be like root or something, which a teammate of mine has done, and it's just a pain. I never do it that way. If you're on the machine, you have access to the things. And so, yeah, you can grant permission to assign roles. It's not permission to the S3 bucket. It's actually permission to the role itself, which has permission to the S3 bucket. So it's kind of like a proxy access to that bucket, but it doesn't give you access to everything else in the bucket, just the roles you have permission to grant.
Right. So my question about that is, like, in a lot of infrastructure, you may be doing something where there's backup or monitoring agents or who knows what else that are infrastructure components that the VM needs to be talking to. And typically that secrets file would have things like accounts to be able to install and configure on that. So like in this sort of model, how would you configure a infrastructure-based service that maybe has a service account to set it up that you don't want the user to have access to? Or is this use case not related to that sort of application?
Having a little bit of trouble grasping that. I was most of the way through that, and then I kind of lost you a little bit. Okay. I think the question...
If you have secrets you don't want the user to have, does this cover that?
Yes, you can do that. So what you do is you set permissions on the file. So the question is, can you make it so that users can't have secrets? They have access to the box, but not to the secrets. You can put permissions on the file so they can't access the file, and then you use the IP tables thing to make sure that they have to be root to access the API.
Thank you.
All the way at the top.
So it seems like the root problem that you're trying to solve here is that auto-signing isn't safe.
More or less.
Okay. Do you have any thoughts on the new auto-signing stuff in Puppet around trusted facts and policy, key-based auto-signing?
Because I use Masterless Puppet, I don't have any opinion on the trusted facts portion of new Puppet, because I always just trusted all my facts in the first place. Because if you had the certified, if you had the trusted certificate, then I assumed you had permission, and now I don't have to worry about it at all, because all of the facts are coming from the local host. Oh, that also points out another limitation of this, is that you can't use exported facts that then get distributed to your cluster, and that's something that my team has just had to architect around.
So I guess that's the root of my question, really. Is if you can trust AutoSign, is Masterless Puppet still the right?
I think it is because I hate scaling the Puppet Master.
Okay.
Yeah, I know.
I just wondered if you played with the Google Cloud Platform at all, because it seems like a lot of this stuff would translate to that as well.
So the question is, have I used Google Cloud Platform? And the answer is no. I've never even touched it. I mean, I got a credit for it at a PuppetConf a few years ago. But I opened up, I gave them my credit card information, left it alone for 2 weeks, and canceled my account. Oh, at the top.
Yeah, I like what you do. I do something very similar with Cloud Init, where I create on-demand clusters. Where I kind of have uncertainty about using Puppet is how complex my configuration actually needs to be before I'm just using Cloud Init to configure that. And I find writing those scripts to be very difficult. I don't know how much of my job, using set or awk to pull things out of places, and how much Puppet would clean up that for me and make that whole experience better.
So I think the question is, how much can Puppet really clean up the process of using, for instance, just the user data script to do all of the work that Puppet was going to do?
Right, so if you did everything you did there in your example, I don't think it would be that much more complicated. It wouldn't be that complicated.
Right. So it wouldn't be that much more complicated, for instance, in this case, to just do all the things that I did in my Puppet module with the bash script.
Right.
And one of the advantages that I find really great is the PuppetForge, because you can use someone else's code to do it for you. I actually really find that Puppet is just another model of describing how you're going to make changes. I disagree with some of my coworkers on that. One of my coworkers is really fond of writing bash scripts to do all the things, and he'll just call them in Puppet and stuff. But basically, Puppet is declarative, and so I find it to be better at describing the state I want the system to be in. And so I'm less prone to bugs with Puppet because I'm describing what I want instead of describing how to get there. And again, the PuppetForge lets me use someone else's code to install and set up Nginx. I didn't have to configure the Etsy Nginx config. I don't even know how to configure the Etsy Nginx config. I've never had to do that. So yes, I think it provides a lot of value, especially when you have large applications that have complex install processes.
So just sort of tagging along with that one, so far, have you found that you spend a lot of time debugging any of those PuppetForge modules? Have you found that, in general, are they consistent enough to be reliable? Or?
Do I find PuppetForge modules reliable? And do I spend a lot of time debugging them? And the answer is that every PuppetForge module I've used, which is about 10 of them, they work flawlessly, except for one specific instance with a combined bug from both Puppet and the Puppet concat module together, causing another module not to work. So, I mean, that wasn't even the concat module's fault. That was there was a bug in Puppet that was really obscure that changed the behavior of the concat module so that it broke the other module. All right, I don't see any more questions. Thank you.